and welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. I'm your host, Kara Hunt, and not with me this morning is my lovely co-host, Sherry Swalwell, who has other commitments this morning, so she will not be able to join with us this morning. But with me is Nikki Jatindranath, who we've been talking with all for the entire month of August. And she's joining us again for a 5-part series. And today we're going to be talking about parenting boys, being the mother of boys, the topic of raising boys. So that's what we are going to be discussing this morning. So how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Kara. It's so good to be with you. And yes, we miss Sherry, but I know she's with us in spirit. And I'm excited about today's topic and being together today.
Oh, I know. And I forgot to mention that. She did say she's here in spirit, she's here in heart, everything else. So, yeah. And so she's her cheery spirit and saintly spirit is definitely with us during this podcast. And I also want to thank all of you who continue to support us on social media and who retweet us and who post share our memes and photos and everything on Instagram. So thank you guys so much. And thank you for all of those who are in our Facebook community group as well. And just remember, if you're new to the podcast, you can find us on any major podcast platform. Just remember to just find it. Just type in the entire phrase, Cheer Up Podcast. Subscribe and download, and welcome to us. So we love having new listeners, and we just thank you for joining us. This is part 3 of a conversation. Part 4 of a conversation we're having with Nikki this month. And we are just so enjoying having her with us. And we are just going to continue the conversation for the entire month of August. And I know you guys have been so excited because it's like after each episode, I know you guys are like, I want to know more. I want to know more. So today we're going to be talking about, like I said, the topic of parenting boys. So, and I also want to mention, Nikki Jatindranath also writes under the name Jerica Kingston. So if you're looking for a really great summer read or something like that, then just go to our website at jericakingston.com, and you'll be able to find her novel as well. So, oh my goodness, Nikki, you and I both have adult young men right now. I was going to say adult boys, but both of us, neither one of us have daughters, but we both have adult sons. And how has that journey been for you?
It's been pretty incredible. First of all, I'm so thankful and blessed to be a mother of 2 sons. To put that in perspective for your listeners, Kara, I grew up in a family with, there were a total of 9 cousins on my maternal side of the family, and out of 9 of us, 8 of us were girls.
Oh,
so that's amazing. I grew up in my personal home with my mother, and I grew up with, I'm trying to count at this point. So I grew up in the home with my 2 sisters. I had a whole sister, my older sister, and then a half sister that I grew up with. And then I had 1, 2, 3. I believe I have 6 stepsisters. So this is the story of my life. When these little boys arrived in my life, I thought, what on this green earth am I going to do with these little people? And life with boys was totally foreign to me, but I'm so very blessed and thankful for them. And it's a journey. And of course, in my situation, starting so young, being married, then right out of high school and being a new mom I basically feel like I grew up with my children. And looking back, I wouldn't change it. I really wouldn't. But now that I look back, and my youngest son is now a father. We have a almost 4 month old our first grandson.
Aww.
And so yes, and so my son said, "Mom, that he and his precious wife were talking about me and my husband the other day, and they're like, we don't know how you did it." And of course, they're 29 years old with a new baby, and they're like, "This is the most difficult thing we've ever done in our life. How did you do this? Still, you were 19 when you first had your first child. So how on earth did you do this?" So yes, I said, "It's pretty hard, isn't it?" And he said, "Hardest thing I've ever done." So you're responsible for this brand new life. And in my case, I not just the physical differences of, changing a diaper and having to duck and things of this
nature. Yeah.
but the emotional differences and personalities of boys versus all that I knew about girls. Life was very emotional in my house growing up, and so this was definitely new territory.
It is, isn't it? It's I have two sisters and two brothers, and both of my brothers are younger than me, but not not significantly enough younger than me per se to where, I could babysit them and change their diapers, and things like that. So it wasn't like I had that experience with them. I wasn't old enough. My older sister was. Right. Mm-hmm. So she probably changed their diapers and things like that. But there wasn't quite that age gap quite there, I think, for me to be responsible enough for that. So even though I had brothers, I didn't even have the chance to, really experience that part of them when they were young, being involved, like changing diapers and things like that, So, but you're right. It's like completely different when you, and you know what? It's not like, and the weirdest thing for me was, and to this day, I don't know what planted this thought in my mind, but I always knew that one day I would be a mom, right? Part of my quote unquote life plan, when I was younger, but I never saw myself with boys. I always thought I would have girls.
Wow.
Okay. So I was like in my mind. Yeah, right. I was like, surprise, and it's like, where did that thought kind of, come from? I'm not exactly sure. So imagine my surprise when I found out both times, because neither time did I really want, I think right around the time that my oldest was born, it was just becoming common practice to get an ultrasound done to get to be able to see the sex of your child, the gender of your child. And I think it was just starting to become common practice. It was being done, of course, but I think it just started being, common practice around that time. And they would kind of ask if you wanted it. And I had put it off for the longest time. I'm like, no need to do it. I already got her name picked out and everything else, and I don't know what persuaded me. Wait, I don't think I got an ultrasound with him. I know it was that people were asking me where was I going to do it, but no. And then it's like all of a sudden I have this baby boy. It's like, oh, I can't call you Summer. It's like, I can't. Okay, so I need to put his name, And by the time my second one was born 7 years later, it was very well done now, ultrasounds and finding out the gender ahead of time and everything. And again, I didn't want to find out, and I kept telling my husband it was going to be a girl, and he's like, no, I think we just really need to. Why don't we just do it? And finally, with him constantly asking me to do it, I went and had an ultrasound, and it was a boy. And so I'm like, okay, then I kind of see where this is going, right? So it was like my mindset had to wrap itself around raising boys, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just like it was a complete mind shift, I think, for me for a while and everything. But you know what? As they became toddlers and they started walking and talking and everything, it was like they were just so much easier because, like I said, I have sisters and whatnot, and I've had enough girlfriends at that time in my life to know, like you say, things could get emotional really quick.
Yeah.
In just certain situations. And thankfully for me, neither one of my boys were criers even when they were babies. They just weren't, criers. They may grunt and, and everything else. Now, obviously, what I mean, they would cry like if they were hungry, if they need a diaper change and stuff like that, right? That's the way babies communicate. But like if they were to fall down or hit the head on table, whatever, they just weren't criers.
Right.
And there was like that no emotion there. So as they started to grow, and I had girlfriends at that time who also had babies around that age or children around that age, I kind of began to enjoy it because I saw what they were going through with their daughters around the same age. So it's like, so it was kind of like, oh, I kind of like this thing. There's like no drama. Right?
I know.
So it was I kind of embraced it, everything for a while. And it was, I don't know. I can't say that I gave up on ever wanting to have a girl because, that wouldn't be true. But I really did embrace the fact of that because, and you found that out too, right? They're just easier to deal with, especially when they're younger.
Yes. So true, indeed. Oh, yeah.
It is. And I do remember some of the funner and things I would get kind of jealous at was, for instance, like a holiday around Easter, and I'm like, and I always make sure my boys were dressed appropriately for church, but, come around Easter time, I'm like, oh, I'll probably get you guys a new pair of slacks or some, maybe a brand new shirt or something. And, they didn't typically wear ties to church, but like that may be something I might have thought of, during the spring season and, around Resurrection Sunday and things like that. Then I would go into the store and there was like just one little section, right?
Yeah.
For boys.
Oh, is that not
one little section there. And everything else was girl stuff. Everything.
Yeah.
From hair ribbons, accessories, jewelry, dresses galore, and every spring color imaginable.
I know.
And the shoes and the purses to match, and everything else. Did you have that experience as well, where you were kind of like, wait a minute, this doesn't quite seem fair?
Absolutely. Every time you could not find anything to dress them nicely in any of the holidays. If you wanted to make a nice family picture, it was. Sometimes I thought, I wish I knew how to sew, and I would.
Oh, right. Yes.
Really nice for this photo. We would color coordinate, but I totally get where you're coming from with that one for sure.
It was such a nightmare. It just didn't feel fair. I'm like, wait a minute, is this all?
I know.
Is this all? I know. It was eye opening for me, especially when I first started doing it.
Yeah.
It's very eye opening and things like that. So that's kind of the little fun or not so fun. And I would get so jealous because my girlfriends and stuff could be like, they're just tossing stuff in there for their daughters. Oh, this is so cute. She looks so cute in this color. Oh, look at that little purse to much. Oh my, oh, and I got to get this little bonnet, right? She's got to
I
have a bonnet.
know. Yes. Oh my word.
And you just kind of sit there and go, like, this is not fair.
I know.
There's got to be more stuff out there for guys, and and things like that. But you're right. Sometimes you're like, I wish I could sew. We could sew and and do things like that. But of course, neither one of my kids, I wouldn't give them any. Well, and I found out at an early age. I don't know if you. Well, no, I can't say an early age. Well, maybe I did, and I just kind of ignored it. But as they became young teens, my boys just didn't like colors. Like I would get them a red shirt or a blue shirt or a green shirt or a yellow shirt or something, and they would like frown up on it and like never wear it.
Yeah.
Because they kind of gravitated towards the dark browns, the dark navies, maybe gray, and black colors. Did you go through? And they kind of still dress that way now. They're just not. If I like for Christmas get them a shirt, or something that doesn't fall into the more darker tone colors, they just, it's like, they smile, but they may not see them in it. So I've learned over the years. Exactly. So did you go through something similar like that regarding their?
Yes, I did. And when they were young, they didn't care like what they wore, but then they get to that point, maybe the end of elementary towards middle school, where my opinion was out the window, and they did not like anything that I was buying for them at the time, which of course it was really neat because you could save a lot of money early
right.
on with the choices that you and here's the bottom line with raising boys, isn't it really, that your choices and theirs are going to be conflicting quite frequently. Yes. After a certain amount of time. And there is a point that they don't, and I hate to use the word, but they don't need their mother's input. I didn't say her influence, her love, any of that, but her input as frequently as they did when they were, say, elementary school children and younger. So yes, it does become it's something for a mother's heart to have to take that step back, because these little people become, I hate to use the word everything, but they become everything. Your life is so wrapped up in their growth and their development, in their becoming young men who will contribute to society and to be godly. So yes, there was always that conflict. The older that they got, that they didn't want to wear that wasn't cool anymore, or something of that nature. So yes, you can begin to see where and it's really paradoxical, because it's what we all want as mothers. We want our children. In the end, we realize, okay, I'm raising this child for someone else, and hopefully I've done a good enough job that when my son gets married, that he will be a blessing to his wife, right? We know that we're raising them for someone else. I had a pastor's wife tell me when they were little one time, first they step on your toes and then they step on your heart. And at the time I thought, I don't get that. What does that mean? I had no, I didn't even want to consider that at the time. What could she mean by that? But I have found these things to be true at times, because we have to be distanced at a certain age from them, because we want them to grow into adults. But for them to get there, we have to untie the apron strings. And this is a difficult place to be for women. I do believe that Mary pondered all these things in her heart about the Lord Jesus, and talk about a blessed woman. I mean, there's to have the perfect Son of God as your child. I mean, there's nothing better. But even Mary had to consider these things, and an arrow pierced her soul as she considered these things as her son was offered up for the sin of the world. So totally different topic, but yes, Mary had to endure these things as well when Jesus said to John at the foot of the cross, "Woman, behold thy son, son, behold thy mother." And so, yes, there's that distancing that has to take place in our lives as they grow. But until that time, what we've poured into them up until that point is so very important into the making of the young men that we pray that they'll turn into when they grow up.
And that is, I'm so glad you brought up the topic of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and how she had to really ponder that in her heart, that she knew that he was, what she wanted for him and what he was really intended to do were two completely different things. Right? And I think as a mom, though, on all levels, we go through that. So were there any expectations you had for your sons when they were babies, and you're like, oh, he's going to do this, I want this for him, I want that for him, and then how did reality turn out? Like what we expect as moms when they're little, and we think so many big, vast things for them. And then as they get older, we're kind of like, ay, ay, ay.
I'm so glad you brought this topic up because, we're so dependent on what the pediatrician says when we take them to their appointment and the milestones that they're supposed to be making. And we're nervous about this, nervous about that. Are they going to be, within the limits? Are they going to be, the right size and the right, is their head the right circumference for their age, and on and on. And of course, these things are important. We want them to reach these milestones. But I remember that both of my boys were very late walkers and very late to even get a tooth. It was after a year for both of my sons to get a tooth and to walk. I think I can't remember if it's been so long. My boys are in their, pushing 30s now. But I think it was like 14 months before one of them started walking, and maybe 14 or 15 before one of them got their first tooth. And I was so concerned. I'm going to have a toothless kid who can't walk in kindergarten. It was like, I don't know why I freaked out about that so much, but I was so concerned. And, then, you're reading information like, oh, if they don't have it by then, this could happen. And they're, relax, mother.
Yeah, because they give you that form with all those statistics on it. Right. I know exactly what you're talking about. Right.
Yes. And so there are, these little milestones that you have in the expectations of just the physiological things that we hope will come to pass. And they do. It just takes some children a little longer than others. And mine were like that, but whether you're out and they're at preschool or whether you're in a church group or a setting like that, you do worry about certain things. And personality wise, like, how are they going to develop? I've been thinking about the things that I'll share, concerning this topic today. And I do know that this one will not be an issue because I've shared this particular story about my son with family members, and he was in the room and he laughed. So I believe I'm safe when I share this story. But when he was in the church nursery coming up, he did not like to play with the other children, and I was so concerned about that. I remember so much when I would come to pick him up, the nursery workers would say, does he like play with his brother at home? Do they play together and stuff? And I'm like, sometimes trying to think, well, does he really enjoy playing with his brother? And no, he didn't, because he liked doing things like he would take if he were to find his father's belt lying around or a shirt or something, he would look at the chest of drawers, and I remember him taking the belt and weaving the belt up the drawer handles and back down, or from side to side with the belt, trying to make it like reach the next drawer. And I'm thinking, is that normal? I mean, what is going on here? What is he doing? And at the time, I had no idea. And they said that he would, in the nursery, face the corner, and he would take building blocks and build straight up. And I thought, okay. And I was so concerned that my child was going to be antisocial and
Yeah.
what's going on. But from a very young age, this particular son loved patterns, and he loved building things. And what I didn't realize as a mom was that he had an engineering mind, and it was coming out even at this very young age. And I had no clue about those kinds of things, and what he was doing, and how his synapses, I guess, were connecting in his brain, and the things that he enjoyed doing. And so, yes, there's just surprises along the way that we don't that maybe we don't consider or we don't understand about our children. And thankfully, he's very social today. He doesn't have any issues or concerns that I would be concerned about. So yes, there are things along the way that we ponder in our hearts as we see them coming along. Like, what is this? What is he like? And the neat thing is that God has formed them to be this, and it pleased God to create these children in the womb, like how they are going to be. It's set in their DNA, like who they are, and how beautiful it is to watch these things come to light. There was so much I didn't understand about him, but that didn't make him different in the sense of being strange. No, it made him different in the sense of being beautifully unique, and how wonderful that is. Each of us fearfully and wonderfully made, and we all have different personalities, different likes. For example, my youngest son, who is the new parent, Leon, when we talk to him, we've noticed that he'll smile occasionally, and his father was the happiest baby there ever was. Now, my first and second were very different. I think I mentioned in my testimony that my first son was born with a cleft lip and palate, and so there were a lot of differences. There were so many struggles with him as far as eating. Obviously, it was so hard, and he would have colic, and there were just so many different things. And so, whether when my firstborn was waking up or going to sleep, it seemed like he was always crying, and it was so very difficult. But then when the youngest came along and he was born, it seemed like he came out laughing. I mean, he was just funny in his own way. And even to this day, my youngest just really appreciates humor. He loves humor, and so we were joking with him about our grandson and said, Leon doesn't seem to be as funny, as you are, like personality-wise, what I remember of him being, even like at 3 months old. And my son just looked at me with his eyes were like horrified, and he's like, oh no, Leon's going to be funny. I mean, he's just, of course he's going to be funny. What else could he be? I mean, he was so offended by the fact that maybe his son would not be funny. And we just laughed because we're like, we don't get to pick and choose in this area. This is God's domain, and he fashions us how he wants us to be, and how he wants us to be might not be what we think we want as parents, right? And so, yes, don't let your expectations of what you hoped for or what you thought you wanted rob you from the joy of what God has blessed you with. This, I think, is very important, because our expectations can be a real joy thief and we don't want anything to steal our joy. We've just got to be grateful for the child that we have, and then develop their personality in the way that they are. What is it? The Proverbs tells us to train up a child in the way that he should go. That means
and he shall not depart from it, right?
And he shall not depart. And in this, I also think it has to do with training that child in God's way, but also don't try to make your children a little mini mold of yourself. It's not fair. It's not right. And it's easy to say, well, I would never do that. No, I wouldn't do that. Do a little introspection. Are there parts of your child's personality that you wish were different? You've just got to be very, very careful. And I'm not talking about, a child's, if a child is doing something wrong, of course we want to correct,
bad behavior,
character flaws that aren't godly. I'm talking about, making that child into a mini me. That's just so unwise. We just have to guard ourselves against that.
I know, and I think I kind of saw that maybe a little bit growing up, where in my because I would attend like my brother's baseball games. They played baseball and football. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and my mom was like always there. She was one of those moms, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, one of those moms where you're like covering your face, like, I don't want anyone to know we're related, because she's like cheering loudly from and from the sidelines and everything else. And she would have this bell that she would ring when one of my brothers was doing make a home run or make a touchdown, or something like that. And, she'd be shouting their names, as they're running and everything. And, so she would kind of like be the loudest one there. And, but on the other side of that, you would see like a lot of dads or with their sons just get really upset, like with their kids, because, they didn't make that home run, or they didn't run fast enough, or you're the shortstop. I would have never missed that when I was a shortstop, when I was your, when I was your age. You know what I'm saying? It's like putting pressure on the kids that, just because you were a great shortstop, right, doesn't mean your kid will be.
Exactly.
You hope that, and you groom them to, and you start playing ball with them as soon as they can hold one, and as soon as they swing a bat, you put it in their hand, and you're like, that's your passion, and you're making sure that they can partake in it, but they may not be as good as you ever were.
I know.
They may fumble every ball that comes their way. And, for someone, if that's your passion, you can't understand it, right? You're like, you're my son. How can you not be able to catch this ball?
Yeah.
And yes, so sometimes, Nikki, it's just so hard when you see other parents doing that and putting that type of pressure on their kids, kind of expecting them to be just as great as they were when they were in a particular sport or a particular, event, or how great they were. Have you witnessed things like that where it seems like, you were a great shortstop? So the dad is saying, I was great at baseball. How come you're not great at baseball? I don't understand. Have you seen incidents like that as well?
I have, and unfortunately, it's in myself. So I'm speaking to women about this because I've made so many errors in it myself. For example, I loved singing, and I always made sure that my sons were in the church choirs and things of this nature, and they could sing so well. They had great pitch, and I just thought, yes, they're going to be wonderful singers. Well, guess what? They are. But they are not as passionate about it, driven about it. It's not their thing. It's not. And there was just, I just thought, okay, I'm going to have this wonderful Christian family course trio, and we're going to do this and that. And, oh, come on. They did not care about it. And that was the hard part, because you think God has blessed these gifts. And I even remember trying to tell them, look, God has gifted you. You guys are, anytime they would pick up an instrument, it seemed like they could play it very quickly. And, and I just thought that since God gave them the ability to be able to do these things well, that they would also have the inborn or innate desire to want to do them. And they just came out and told me one day, Mom, we don't want to do this. We really don't like it. And it's not our thing. You're very good at it. And, we love to hear music. We love music, but we don't want to be the ones making it. And
right.
So it was eye-opening to me that, yes, I'm guilty of this. I can't do this. I have to let them come up in the way that God meant for them to come up. And they have their own unique giftings and their own talents and skills and desires. And so that's where it is. So yes, I totally understand the I hate to say fallacy, but we just have to be very careful that, yes, we can introduce our children to things that are healthy and good for their minds and their physical bodies, even whether it's sports or whether it's music or art or anything, but direct the child to these experiences and then let the child decide what their own passions are and guide them in that. As long as they're Christ-honoring aptitudes, then that's something that we can be confident in as parents that we've done our best.
And you know what? That is so key. It is, because as everyone who listens to the podcast regularly know, I love music, and I love worship music and contemporary Christian music, gospel music, any type of, God-honoring music. I just love it. And I remember when my oldest was in a choir, and he had been in it from a young age, but as he got older, his voice got deeper. And I remember one of his choir teachers saying to me, how rich his voice was and how he had this deep basso profundo voice, I think she called it, type of thing. And I'm like, oh, I have a singer. Yes. Yes. It's like, oh, I have a singer, and, and everything else. And so while he enjoyed the choir, while he loved all the events and the things that they did, choir related, but after that, and after he graduated, he was, but I always knew, even though in my heart, I kind of was like in words too, urging him to pursue that a little bit. His heart was in martial arts.
Yeah.
He was definitely much more of a martial arts person than a singer, right? And he was so good at piano. Both of my boys. I was not introduced to the piano as a child. I grew up more in like a sports type family type of thing, so I wasn't musical instruments wasn't like introduced to us when we were younger. And I always remember, I wish I had learned piano. So I tried to make sure that both of them had piano lessons, and my oldest had picked up, could play music by ear. And my youngest had definitely had the fingers for it, right? And he was so good at it. And yet neither one of them, it's like it was something that I was pushing on them, but it wasn't their thing. They had other things they wanted to do. My oldest, his first like hobby love was definitely martial arts, and then my second oldest, his was definitely computers, right? Wow. So he was definitely our computer person, And I'm going, and there is that point where you're like, but why don't you want to pursue these things? You guys are so gifted. You could do these things. And there's that point where you talk about where we want one thing, but God has designed them for something else. And just being able to let that part go and just be like, okay, God, you've got this. My heart is breaking. It goes back to that stepping on your heart thing that you were talking about. It's like my heart is breaking because they could be doing this, they got this skill and that skill, But then you find
Mm,
out that God ends up blessing you and them with the skills that He's giving them. Right?
exactly.
And
Yes.
so it's like we have to kind of let go of that, and it tugs at our heart because we see them as, doing these things, and then they are pursuing these other things. And it takes a while for you to just be able to embrace that and be like, oh my goodness, God knew what He was doing all along, right?
I know. Oh,
It's like His
mm,
ways are so much better than
yes.
our ways. But
Yes.
before we in this topic today, you and I both were introduced like today to a topic that I just want to get into just a little bit, and we may pick this up again in next week's episode. But we just found out something. We found out it has a name. We didn't find out just today what it is, but we were talking about mommy rage, and how those who are experiencing it are those who have dealt with it to where, you're just so disappointed in your children for one reason or another because they aren't making those statistics that they percentile statistics and stuff that you were talking about earlier and that they give you at every a pediatrician's office or something, or you know they're not the best one on this team, they're not the best gymnast, they're not the best musician, they're not the best um pianist, or they just keep doing things that is so against the godly way that you try to raise them up to be. I mean, we could go on and on and on about this,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just related to boys. We're talking about raising young men today, but with any child, and it talks about mommy rage, and so you and I were talking about that earlier. We just didn't know it had an actual name, you
Yeah.
know. But now you and I have been at this almost 30 plus years, right, with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
with boys, to anyone listening and who may be going through that with their children, what would your advice be?
Yes. As I was a military wife, and my husband was deployed quite frequently when my children were younger. I had no family who lived near or around me, so my family was my church family. I believe my husband and I added up the time there's a military discharge paperwork known as a DD 214, and I believe on there we looked one day and it said that he had 7 years and something of sea duty, and we looked at each other and I thought that means you and I have lost 7 years of our marriage and 7 years of the children not having their father at home. That when you put that into perspective and you think about it, it's so mind-boggling.
It is.
So, and then for the single mother who my heart goes out to, who never has, that father in the picture, oh man, do I ever pray for this lady. I don't even know you, but believe me, I pray for single moms because this is so. There's a lot of stress that goes along with you being both parents. It's in God's economy, this is the way that He had planned for it to be done. And whether the husband is not in the home due to his passing or due to him being in the military or whatever the situation might be, dear woman, find yourself. I pray that you're in a good church and you're surrounded with other godly women who can help you and your family, because it is so, it will happen. You will have the days where you're just so upset if you don't have that support system that you need, because like I said, the expectations that we have, or you thought that it wouldn't be quite so difficult. Maybe you have a child who's a strong-willed child that just seems to push your buttons every day. And that happens a lot with boys. Boys want to test the boundaries. They figure out very early that especially if they're in Christian circles. They hear during the sermons, that the males, their role is to be the head of the household, and so you may have that older child who's just pushing back, and what is going on here? I don't understand what's happening. Well, you're a female, he's a male. He's trying to assert his maleness. He's trying to figure out what that means and becoming a man. And so we have to do our best not to, go on the offensive about that. Yes, there's a place, and we understand roles in the family, and that children are supposed to, love and respect their parents. But he's also trying to figure out what it means to be a man. And so, yes, when that rage or that, you just can't find center, or you become so upset and you feel like you don't have an outlet or a place or that support that you need, it's so very helpful to just remember that if you are a Christian, Christ is in the midst. He is with you. That means he is present in your situation. And I don't say this to shame anyone, but we have to remember that he is in our homes. He is in us as a believer, as a guarantee, a deposit through the Holy Spirit. And so we have to draw from that, and we have to turn to the Word and turn to good, godly friends. And by all means, if it is a rage that overtakes you frequently, then yes, I would even say turn to a godly counselor. There are people in the church who have counseling degrees who are equipped to help us deal with these things. The word says to put away all wrath and malice and anger. And these things, we have to look at the root. What is the root of all these things? When you're looking at wrath and anger, the root of that is something didn't go the way that I expected it to. Something didn't go my way, and we're upset about it. So the root of that rage is, I thought it should have gone this way. Obviously, it went the other direction, and now my response is an unbiblical one. So this is something we have to curb in ourselves. This is something we have to pray and ask the Lord to take from us, and that we will trust his sovereignty and know that, no, it's not all in our hands. We're not in control, and we need our Father to guard our hearts and to guide us into being the mothers that we should be for our children.
Oh my goodness, Nikki. That almost should be in every godly Christian parenting, biblical parenting manual, exactly everything that you just said. And there's nothing more to add to it, because it was so deep, it was so insightful, and such a well thought out response, and an on the cuff response too. And it is just it's so timely, and it transcends, whether you're dealing with young men, young girls, adult men, adult girls, adult women, or anything like that, or if you're dealing with toddlers. It's just so timely in regarding to all of those stands, and especially, like you said, if you're dealing with, you somehow find yourself in a situation to where you're dealing with a situation along with your children, whether because your husband is in the military, or he has another job like law enforcement, first responder, medical doctor, something that keeps him away from the home for long periods of time. You do have to make a lot of those decisions on your own and deal with those on your own. And that advice that you just shared was next level. So thank you so much for doing that, and for joining us today, again today. And you know what? I think I want to, we may continue this topic just a little bit in next week's episode as well. So for those of you who are saying, hey, mommy rage, what is that? I want to know more about it. I'm expecting my first child. Is this something I may experience, or I'm dealing that with now with a house full of kids I'm dealing with right now, or what exactly is it? What are the symptoms of it, or anything like that? We will, because we just introduced the topic today, and so we may go back. We are going to go back into it, if you're okay with that, Nikki, a little bit in the next episode, and just kind of dig more into mommy rage, and just continue to give more biblical and sound advice to do it, to where a mom doesn't feel like she's about to lose her mind. Because I've been there, and I know you've been there, you know, but we've been on the other side of it now. So it does get better. There is always hope. Yes. Just like John 16:33 talks about, we will always have trials and tribulation in this world, but be of good cheer, for he has overcome the world. And sometimes our trials and tribulations involve our children. Okay? But be of good cheer, because just like Nikki said, God is right there in the midst, and he is not going to abandon your children. So, and again, we're going to pick this up again in the next episode as well. So to find out more about Nikki, you can go to her website at jericakingston.com, JericaKingston.com. You can find out more. You can reach her more. You can reach out and contact her more via her website. You can, and of course, if you want to go to my website or find out more about me or Sherry, some more there, you can just go to KaraRhunt.com, KaraRhunt.com, and SherrySwalwell.com, CherisWell.com. And thank you all for listening so much to this week's episode of the Trail Podcast, and we can't wait to welcome you back next week. Bye now.